Hi there. My name is Kim from the blog queenofheartsclub.com. I've spent the past year experimenting with ways to lower my blood pressure through habit formation. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly how I lowered my blood pressure from an average of 155 over 100 to about 125 over 75 without the use of medication. Now, I want to say up front, I am not a doctor. I am not a nutritionist. I am just telling you my story. I'm telling you what I did. But before you make any major changes to your lifestyle, including quitting your blood pressure medication, it's important that you talk to your doctor. I wanted to show you my cat is at the top of the bookshelf behind me right now. So if you hear any bathing sounds, that would be him. He just jumped down on the sofa. Stop making noise. Okay, the cat is now gone. So in 2019, I started seeing a cardiologist. I won't go into the details of exactly why, but I did write a post about it on my blog, so I'll link that below if you're interested in reading it. My cardiologist put me on a low dosage of a diuretic medication. This is a very common medication to give people who are experiencing high blood pressure. And I had mixed results. I did actually see my blood pressure come down a little bit, but not significantly. And when we added the diuretic to my lifestyle, I started seeing some effects to my period. It made my flow heavier. It made my cycle shorter, so I was having more periods. It made it more painful. And if you're a woman, you know that any time any kind of medication or treatment or anything affects your period, that's a giant red flag. So I talked to my doctor about this, and he said the only thing that he could really do was continue to increase the dosage of my medication until we saw significant results in the reduction of my blood pressure. And then there was a possibility we could try some other blood pressure medications, but this is the one that he recommended to start with. And he mentioned that probably someday I was going to have surgery, because that's just how it goes. This is how the Western medical model works. It's not that my doctor didn't care about the outcome of my health. It's just that this is the framework that he's working in. And it works for a lot of people. A lot of people really do well on these blood pressure medications. And they really just don't want to change their lifestyles. They just want to take the pill, the magic pill, and be done with it. And I totally respect that. That was not going to be my journey, though. I wanted to work in a preventative environment. I wanted to modify my lifestyle in a way that would help me lower my blood pressure without taking these medications that would affect my period. So the first step to this process was research. My doctor did tell me that I should be changing from a white table salt to a like a Redmond's real salt, because salt in its natural form has a lot more minerals than the salt that we consume as white table salt, and those minerals are stripped out of it before it hits your table. So he did recommend changing that. He also recommended cutting out sugar or minimizing sugar and losing weight. And that was really his only guidelines. So I knew that I had to research on my own to figure out what else that I could do. And the key to that is to make sure I was using reputable data sources. This is very important. Not everything that you read on the internet or hear on the internet is fact. So you need to make sure that you are checking your sources. You know, make sure you're reading from actual medical journals or scientific studies that have been peer reviewed, not from, bob.com. This research boiled down to 3 pieces of advice: lose weight, stress less, and get better sleep. And I had actually had a doctor one time told me to stress less because of other reasons. But yeah, those were the pieces of advice. If you are here, I'm willing to bet that you've heard these pieces of advice before. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. But what I am saying is that those are not actionable goals. You can't just wake up one morning and decide to lose weight and then it happens. You cannot decide to stress less and it happens. You can't decide to sleep better and it happens. I mean, you could make the argument that it could happen by changing your mindset, but let's be honest. We all know that these things happen over time based on small habits that we incorporate into our daily lives. Our behaviors are what determine the outcomes of these particular pieces of advice. So I realized what it all comes down to is habit formation. But habit formation is difficult. And this is actually why your doctor is not recommending this to you. According to the British Journal of General Practice, many health professionals shy away from giving advice on modifying behavior because they find traditional behavior change strategies time-consuming to explain and difficult for the patient to implement. So I knew what I had to do. I knew the outcomes I was looking for. I just had to break that down into smaller pieces and figure out how to save myself. What I needed was a plan with actionable goals, small things that I could perform on a daily basis that would lead to better health. So I conducted 12 controlled experiments, introducing a new independent variable each month of the year in 2021. Over the year, I built on those habits over time, and then I recorded my blood pressure results for each month of the year. Now, I was not perfect at any of it. That's not how I work. I'd argue that's not how human beings work in general. But every little goal that I implemented pushed me a little further toward my ultimate health goals. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on each of these habits. Throughout 2021, I was tracking my progress all throughout the year on my blog. So I will link to that below and you can read every single month and you can dive into all of the data and really look at what I did on a regular basis. But today, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I did for each habit. Hi. It's actually much later now. As you can see, there's no light coming in from the window behind you. In editing, I realized that this video was going to be much longer than the normal YouTube video. And I don't want to get rid of any of the information. I think that I just want to chop it into 2 videos. So I'm just stopping in to let you know that this video will contain the first 6 months of the experiment. And then the next 6 months and the results at the end of the year are going to be published next Sunday in a second video. That way you get all of the information. It doesn't have to be rushed and you get it in 2 parts. The first thing I did was start with a regular yoga practice, 3 days a week. I set an alarm on my phone on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Now I work from home and I've worked from home for a very long time before the pandemic even hit. But one of the key things that I think a lot of people have learned recently is that when you work from home, it's really hard, or rather it's really easy to sort of slip into this work anytime kind of attitude. So I found myself working past 5 o'clock every day just because I was in the middle of something. I figured I might as well finish it and then be done. So setting an alarm for 5 p.m. 3 days a week was very helpful to get me out of that cycle and to make sure I was focusing on my health goals as well. We used the DDPY Yoga program. It was built by a former wrestler named Diamond Dallas Page. And I guess he sort of mans up the yoga moves. There's a lot of like sports terminology that he uses for the moves. but he was highly motivating, and my husband was doing it with me. It was very helpful that my husband was doing it with me because I feel like if I was doing it on my own, I might not have held myself accountable enough. And so I think the more manliness of it sort of helped him, um, feel better about doing the yoga 3 days a week. I'm really glad that we started with yoga. We saw really great results. My blood pressure came down significantly, which was very motivating during the month of January. It was just a really good way to kick off the experiment. In fact, looking at the data for the entire year, this was the month that I saw the deepest dive in my systolic pressure, which is the top number in your blood pressure reading. This is the amount of pressure in your arteries during the contraction of the heart muscle. I talk a lot about not depriving yourself, about making sure that your inner rebel doesn't take hold and run things for you, um, which happens every time I deprive myself of something. Um, but one of the pieces of advice my doctor had given me was to reduce the amount of sugar in my diet. And I felt like we didn't actually eat a lot of sugar anyway. But I went ahead and completely eliminated the white processed sugar from our diet in the month of February. And it actually turned out to be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Again, I'm going to point to my blog here. I do have a post called The 7 Secrets of Surviving Without Sugar. One of those secrets is using maple syrup or honey, natural sugars that are not that white refined sugar that can help to eliminate that sugar craving. Fruit is also a great way to do that. Um, you know, and Simple Mills, I have to say, makes a great brownie mix. We get it from Thrive Market, and it uses coconut sugar, and I guarantee you will not be able to tell the difference. February resulted in another deep dive of my blood pressure results. And interestingly, out of all the months of the year, this was the month that I saw the deepest decline in my heart rate. So I don't know what that has to do with sugar, but it's an interesting result. Also, I should mention, I'm still doing yoga 3 days a week at this point. All of these habits, I'm not stopping one month and focusing on another the next month. I'm building on these habits over time. So for the rest of the year, I'm still doing yoga 3 days a week and eliminating sugar from my diet. The month of March, Meditation March is what I was calling it, was the hardest habit for me to implement. I just have a hard time relaxing and getting out of my head, and making time to do both of those things was difficult for me. I have no chill. I can't I can't chill. So, well, now I can. It was difficult, but I did it. To help create this habit, I also set an alarm on my phone. I did this one at noon, 3 days a week. So now I have 2 alarms set on my phone, one 3 days a week of yoga at 5 p.m. and one for 3 days a week of meditation at noon. And I did not do this on my own. I downloaded the Harmony app, which does some meditation slash hypnotism, and also the Calm app, which I find is great as well. So what's interesting is in March, my blood pressure declined, but my heart rate actually went up a little bit. Again, I don't know why. But what was very exciting is I met my first small goal in the month of March. And that is, I lowered my blood pressure to the same level that it was at when I was taking 20 milligrams of the diuretic blood pressure medication that I had stopped taking at the beginning of the year. And now my blood pressure was back to that level all by myself. I had done that in just 3 months. So I knew that I was on to something. So those first 3 habits, the yoga, the cutting out sugar, and the meditation, I feel like those are the pillars of this experiment. Those were 3 major things that I made sure to incorporate into my life. The rest of these goals for the rest of the year are much smaller, much less intense, easily incorporated into the day. And most of them didn't result in the kind of declines in my blood pressure that I saw in those first 3 months. However, one of them actually, and I'll tell you about what that is later, lowered my diastolic blood pressure more than any other month in the year. But we'll get to that in a minute. At this point, I was very comfortable using the power of three, which is something that I could actually do a whole other video on. It's a very interesting concept, the power of three. So I went ahead and used it for drinking tea as well. This was actually a lot harder than you might think. Remember, I have trouble with relaxing. So having a cup of afternoon tea sounds very romantic and relaxing, but I can't do it. At least that's what I thought. Again, I set an alarm on my phone. So I have a yoga alarm, I have a meditation alarm, and now I have a tea time alarm at 3 p.m. 3 days a week. And eventually, even though it was difficult to sort of get into the groove of this, I learned to really love it. I learned to really crave this sort of break that I was forcing myself to take in the middle of the workday. And it was nice. I like it. In the month of April, I met another small health goal. I officially fell out of stage 2 hypertension. If you haven't seen this chart from the American Heart Association, I'll post a link to it below. It lays out the stages of hypertension in order to illustrate how much danger your heart is in, depending on the category in which you rank. So when I started this experiment at the beginning of 2021, I was in that stage 2 hypertension. And by the end of April, I had fallen into stage 1 hypertension, which is still not great, but I was very happy with my progress. And again, I had some more motivation to keep going. In May, I decided to add some long chain omega-3 fatty acids to my diet in the form of salmon once a week. There was a study conducted by Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and that study concluded that only about 1/3 of Americans eat seafood once a week, while nearly half eat fish only occasionally or not at all. I was in the latter half of that group. I thought of salmon as a luxury item, as something that you eat on special occasions and not on a regular basis. And I also just didn't like making it. I wasn't very good at making it, so I just sort of didn't try. So May was fun because I was experimenting with different recipes for salmon. I'd had a few salmon dishes at various restaurants that I tried to recreate at home that turned out really well. One was this like salmon risotto, lovely. And it really demystified the experience for me. It gave me the confidence to be able to go ahead and cook this for myself on a regular basis. And in May, I met another small goal. My blood pressure fell to the same level as it was when I was taking 50 milligrams of the diuretic. Now, I never actually went above the 50 milligram mark. I started at 5 milligrams, and then my doctor worked me up to 50 over time. And that's when I stopped taking it. So I was really happy with this situation because 5 months in, and I had achieved the same level of results as I had taking this blood pressure medication for a year. And there were no side effects. So at the beginning of June, I was feeling some burnout on this experiment. I'd been working on this for 5 months and I felt like I needed a break, but I ignored that. Then I sprained my ankle. And if you've ever sprained your ankle, you know that this is debilitating. You're down, having to rest for several weeks so that you can let it heal, which means several weeks of not working out. My initial plan for June was to add 2 days a week of workouts in addition to the 3 days a week of yoga, taking my total to 5 days a week. And that didn't happen. Now, I tried to find it for a little while. I did yoga in a chair for a while. And it was June, so I did some swimming, you know. And then the universe was like, I said, take a break. my son, my 11-year-old, was bit by a dog. And I felt like, okay, I will pay attention now and I will take a break. So June is a break. 6 months in, makes sense. Take a step back, relish in the progress that you've made, and just breathe. Now, in doing this, my blood pressure increased for the month, which I think was an interesting result as well. It's interesting to see that happen because stress clearly impacts blood pressure, and it was kind of a stressful month for me. But I'm not going to lie, this going backwards in the data, gaining some points, my blood pressure reading was a little hard to see. But I decided to regroup and start fresh again in July and see if I could make some strides. If you made it this far, please click the like button below. It really helps with the algorithm on YouTube, really helps my channel with visibility. Also, if you're interested in seeing more of these videos, if you want to hear about any one particular habit, post about that in the comments below and I will come up with something. Also, you might want to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in hearing more content about this. I'm posting once a week, every Sunday. So thanks for sticking with me through this very long video, and I'll see you next week.